today wanted to both mark this anniversary, which is quite a significant one, because I think without argument the Iraq War was the greatest atrocity of my generation. Remains to be the greatest atrocity of my generation. I'm 33. And so in many of our lifetimes, there's really been no greater crime, no greater loss of life than the Iraq War. And so I want to mark that anniversary and talk about some of the important details about this anniversary, but also how we can apply it to the current situation that we're in, and how the Iraq War gives us insight into not just kind of the inevitable drives of capitalism and imperialism, but how the capitalist system and how the imperialist war machine is actually managed, and how the situation we're in today under Trump very much mirrors the situation under George W. Bush when we got into this massive mess. So of course, the U.S. establishment has countless justifications for why we went to Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, liberation, all of these things. But we know that it was just about resources. And we know that capitalism has to drive towards every corner of the planet that it doesn't control. There's resources it doesn't dominate. Not just countries who completely reject it and don't let it in, but even countries that try to cooperate with the United States. If it's not total hegemony by the U.S. empire, they're on the list for complete destruction and conquest. And so Iraq was on that list for quite a long time. So 2003 was really the culmination of decades of policies, consecutively through Democratic and Republican administrations, since the day that Iraq nationalized its oil and declared that it would use its resources for its own people. And from that day on, the United States tried to overthrow the government in various different ways. Most devastatingly before 2003 was under Bill Clinton, with the sanctions and bombings through the 90s, where hundreds of thousands of people were killed directly by the effects of the sanctions, most of them babies, most of them under 2 years old, as a conscious policy by the US government, knowing that we're going to go in and bomb all the water treatment plants so there's no clean water, and then we are going to not allow in any of the medicines that treat the very basic diseases from dehydration, dysentery, and things like that. So intentionally caused around 500,000 babies to waste away from diarrhea and no clean drinking water as an intentional policy, and they've admitted to this. So the pretext of 2003 is quite a horrific one, and one that shouldn't be forgotten either. But the imperialists had always wanted to get into Iraq. They always wanted to overthrow its government, get access to its oil, but something changed in this time. And that was, they had someone in office who they felt would be belligerent enough to do such a thing. And of course, the Democratic Party, pretty much in its entirety, supported the Iraq War. Some people remember the Democratic Party being a force of opposition to the Iraq War, but the opposition of the Democratic Party was really, we didn't send enough troops, and we're doing it the wrong way. It was all about, the management style of the occupation. But, today the real legacy of the war is around 1 million Iraqis killed by the U.S. occupation. So from 2003 until it officially ended in 2011, 1 million human beings. I mean, it's hard to really, express that massive loss of life. 1 in 3 Iraqis killed, wounded, or displaced. 1 in 3. I mean, everyone was touched in the entire country. The number of people maimed and wounded. The number of people orphaned or widowed. It's in the millions. It's in the many millions. The country is poisoned. I mean, there's cities in Iraq where you can't have a child. It's completely devastated society as an intention. And so today, when we see ISIS and everyone talking about sectarianism in Iraq and why that is why Iraq can't stand on its own and why it's dealing with so many problems, I mean, this was a conscious strategy of the U.S. occupation. When Iraq fell, when the Ba'athist government fell, there was plenty of Iraqi organizations and political figures who were ready to step in and say, okay, the government's gone, we're ready to administrate it. All the Ba'ath Party had been liquidated. Iraq was ready to stand up on its own already. But the United States didn't want that to happen, because they only wanted their people, their puppets, to be taking charge. And so they decided who was going to be in the government. They decided how the government was going to be structured. Against international law, created a government that was divided along sectarian lines, that required certain people of certain ethnicities to fill certain seats. This was completely foreign to Iraq. It was not a country that was wrought with any type of sectarianism before. They divided neighborhoods along sectarian lines. They divided police and military forces along sectarian lines. I actually personally was involved in the hiring of Iraqi police officers. And the job interview to be an Iraqi police officer, it was one question: is what are you Arab, Kurdish, or are you Shia, Sunni, or Kurdish? And that was the how you applied for the job to be a police officer. And the cost, of course, for U.S. soldiers and for military families also was extremely great. Around 5,000 U.S. soldiers died. Many of whom joined the military not thinking that anything like this was going to happen. The legacy of that, these soldiers came home and then commit suicide in massive, massive numbers. And when it was very obvious and acknowledged that there was a crisis, an epidemic of suicides in the U.S. military and among veterans, not only did the U.S. government and the military commanders do nothing to try to address it, but they implemented policies of punishing those who were trying to seek help, forcing them to go on more and more deployments, denying them access to medical care so they could say, oh, you don't get a disability payment of $200 a month because we're not going to say you have any type of trauma. And so not only did they devastate Iraq and cause a massive suffering and loss of life for Iraqis, but even the people that they were holding up as the greatest heroes and making you salute at every sports game you go to, or when you go to theme parks, you have to wave a flag when you see Shamu or something like that, or when you saw Shamu back in the day. Those people, they just let them die and end up on the streets when they came home when they were begging for help. It was also a time of great resistance also. Here in the United States, there were massive, massive protests against the Iraq War. The Party for Socialism and Liberation, one of the main anchoring organizations of the Answer Coalition, took part in initiating, organizing, and leading the biggest anti-war demonstrations in the country of hundreds of thousands all across the country. Really demonstrations at a scale that we really haven't seen until now in the anti-Trump movement. Of course, the immigrant rights movement brought out massive numbers that were comparable. But there was an era of mass struggle and resistance by many people in this room who came into political life during that era. And it was a time of mass resistance in the U.S. military as well. I organized with other soldiers, Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, active duty people. Many people don't know, but soldiers in the hundreds and even in the thousands refused to go to Iraq, fled the country to Canada, took political stands and said they weren't going, risked going to jail. Many of whom went to jail to refuse to go. I personally know people who in Iraq took their bolt out of the rifle in Iraq and said, I'm not doing this anymore. So even in the combat zone, refusing to take part in it. One demonstration in Washington, D.C. In September in 2008, over 100,000 people, the front contingent was veterans and active duty soldiers in uniform, 300 of them, about 100 of whom got arrested pouring over the steps of the Capitol. That's really the history of the Iraq War. And of course, history of resistance among the Iraqi people. And a national resistance, widespread across every sector of Iraqi society, actually defeated the U.S. military regime. This is one of the rewrites of the history of the Iraq War that the United States left after having accomplished everything it wanted to accomplish. The United States was forced out by the Iraqi resistance. In fact, Obama, when he was preparing for his so-called withdrawal, there was a last-ditch effort sending Robert Gates to Iraq, then Secretary of Defense, to demand that they extend the Status of Forces Agreement to continue the occupation indefinitely. And the only reason that didn't happen is because of the revelations by Chelsea Manning that showed how widespread and wanton the killing of civilians was, and how there was absolutely no accountability. And so when Robert Gates went to Iraq, about 300,000 Iraqis marched armed in the streets and said, this little bit of peace that we have now, because we've agreed, you've paid us to stop fighting you, it's back on if you are here one more day past this deadline, because we've seen from these documents that you were completely unwilling to hold any of your soldiers accountable when they murder us in the streets for absolutely no reason. So it was a victory for resistance of the Iraqi people as well. But despite what could be called a victory from a military standpoint, Iraq is a crushed country. You can't go, it's completely devastated. You can't go anywhere except heavily fortified military bases. It's a place that was once a beautiful, culturally rich, stable place to be. And it's going to be a crushed country for a long time. I mean, Iraq will stand back up, but it's likely going to be many, many decades before Iraq has any kind of peace. And the people responsible, the people that said this was about, but the people that willfully lied, knowing that they lied, committed a great crime, a crime defined actually at the Nuremberg trials as the greatest crime any country can commit, the illegal invasion of a sovereign nation. The people who committed that crime are not only not in jail, but they're making millions of dollars off of book tours. I mean, I don't know if you saw recently, George W. Bush, he's making his rounds on all the late shows. He's on Jimmy Kimmel, he's on Ellen, he's like this funny, quirky guy now. He's the one who sent all of these people to their deaths. The blood is directly on his hands of those thousands of soldiers and those millions of Iraqis whose lives are destroyed, and all of the Iraqis that are going to be born in this situation for many generations to come. But how did this actually happen? And how can we let that inform what's going on today and help us prepare for what's going on today? So I think many have this, I've heard this thing a lot that, they knew the war was going to go badly and it was this big money-making thing for the defense contractors. That they knew that it was going to be a heavy fight, that they were going to need to carry it on for years, and that the defense contractors were just going to make a ton of money selling the Humvees that were going to get blown up and selling the bombs that were going to go get dropped. I would say that was more of an unintended consequence of the war. The Bush administration, with just their supreme arrogance, really thought that it was going to be easy. They really thought that they could invade Iraq, the government was going to fall, they'd tell them who their next government was going to be, they'd leave some soldiers there, and then they would just run the country and sell off all its oil to U.S. companies. They really thought that was going to happen. They thought that they could just impose rule and occupation on another people. And in my experience too, I didn't think I was going to see an Iraqi person. And we were all I was there in the invasion in March of 2003. In fact, at this time I was sitting on an airfield. We didn't think we were going to be there more than 2 months. That's what our commanders were telling us. The Iraqis, when we got there, the very first months of the occupation, after all the craziness of the invasion, which lasted a couple weeks, all the Iraqis that I encountered were pretty much chill because they were like, oh yeah, you guys are about to leave, and whatever. So it was very non-confrontational in the beginning because both parties on both sides thought, oh, this is going to be over. But when it was clear that the United States was not leaving, when it was clear that they were going to try to dictate their government, they brought in this guy Paul Bremer to be the dictator of Iraq, who literally had a 2-week crash course in Middle East politics before being sent to be the dictator of the country. When they realized that that's what was happening, the Iraqi people started resisting and they started fighting back. And no one was prepared. There's stories about lack of equipment in Iraq and things like that. I remember we didn't have plates for our body armor, so we put books in our body armor to try to make extra things. All these stories of putting fake doors on that made out of metal because you had no doors in your Humvees. This is because the U.S. was really not prepared for any kind of resistance. And so what happened? Resistance picked up, and then it very quickly became clear that this wasn't going to be what the Bush administration dreamed of. That it wasn't just going to be either knock down that country and then move on to the next country, which they had planned to go to Iran and Syria, Libya, and all these countries was on their list. But they did not anticipate that this was going to happen. So Iraq very quickly became a hell. Because very quickly, the resistance picked up, and as soon as resistance picked up, the politicians and the generals said, well, we got to hit them harder. And so they increased the brutality of the tactics. Several years into the war, you'll hear stories of people saying that if any explosion went off or any gunshot was fired, the response was just to shoot everyone you saw in the area. If you were in a crowded city market, 360 degrees of fire is called, just shoot in all directions. If you get attacked by mortars, just shoot back 100 artillery rounds at the part that it came from, to try to just crush anyone who was thinking of resisting. And it became a hell for soldiers too. Everyone was just sent on suicide missions. It was, you're in this flimsy truck, you know that, oh, if you drive into this neighborhood, one of your trucks is going to get blown up, and 5 people are going to die in that truck. And day after day after day, commanders would just say, go drive into that neighborhood for absolutely no reason except to say, oh, we're occupying this, we're in charge here. No purpose except to go in on a suicide mission and get blown up. And so that's why so many soldiers died. For no, Navy SEAL type mission or whatever. It was like, we're just here and we're just going to drive around in a circle while everyone just gets killed for absolutely no reason. But it reached a point where it was completely clear that the military victory that the generals and politicians dreamed of was completely impossible. In fact, by about 2004 or 2005, that was clear, that there was going to be no victory for the US military in Iraq. So when it was clear that there was going to be no victory, what did they do? I mean, this actually played out in the Vietnam War, and it's playing out today in Afghanistan. When it was clear that there was no way they could win, they just sent more and more and more people to die and to kill more Iraqis, knowing that the outcome was going to be what the outcome was, that they were going to have to leave in retreat and not, get all the things that they wanted, like base and all of the oil and everything. So, for no other reason than to just spare themselves the embarrassment, personally, of being the general or the politician that lost the Iraq War, and to protect the face and the image of the U.S. empire. They said, you can't be defeated by insurgencies. We're the U.S. empire, we're the most powerful military ever. So it was that saving face strategy is the reason for such destruction. The U.S. capitalist system did not intend to get bogged down in Iraq. They didn't intend to get into a major war. It was just this consequence of their extreme arrogance. And they just let it spiral out of control because none of them were going to say, okay, we're going to leave. And that's how the capitalist system is managed, right? I mean, you have this overall drive towards conquering every part of the planet, this need that the capitalist system has. But you have people who are managing it. On the one hand, you have the generals, whose very careers are built off of this, right? So these very elitist general officers, the high ranking in the military, the military brass elite. The best thing for their promotions is that they have a battlefield commander points, meaning that they commanded a battalion in combat, meaning they sat back in front of a computer while they sent soldiers out to die. So they have a lot of interest in pushing politicians to go to war because they want to become a 4-star general. And then you have politicians who make the decisions, who we know are completely beholden to corporate interests, who of course are telling them, yes, we want to go into Iraq because we're going to make about $7 trillion if we go in there. And so all these career politicians at the same time are the other side of that coin. So these generals and politicians who are completely out for their own narrow interests, ultimately beholden to a bigger system that's just bent on conquering every part of the planet, that's who makes the decisions of life and death for us. That's who decides if our family and friends are going to go to war, and who's going to decide if our brothers and sisters in Iraq or anywhere else are going to be killed and pay the horrific price that Iraq played. So that's kind of the situation that we're in today. A different type of situation that we didn't have under Obama. Obama represented a different sector of the U.S. ruling class that favored a different type of strategy of conquering and dominating the rest of the world. It was still a strategy for conquering and dominating the rest of the world, but more of a restrained one. But right now, I think the military brass, the top ranks of the Pentagon, they see a big opportunity. You watch the news and you see generals on TV who are like anti-Trump generals who are criticizing Trump. And how are they criticizing him? They're saying, he's not tough enough on North Korea. He's not tough enough on Russia. He's not tough enough on Syria, right? So you're going to have the Trump administration with all these generals who so much want their fantasies of a new war that they're going to command. They know they have a guy that they can probably push to do those things. And you have all these right-wing politicians also who favor this strategy of we can just go in and just take whatever we want. So they say a different type of opportunity under Trump. And what will they do if, right now Trump's already sent a couple thousand new soldiers to Syria, illegally invading Syria. What happens if what happened in Iraq starts happening in Syria, where U.S. soldiers start dying in large numbers, like they did in Iraq? Do you think they're going to say, oh, now that this actually is turning out bad, we're going to leave? No, they're going to send more and more soldiers. What happens if they launch a strike on North Korea, and then there's a strike in South Korea where many U.S. soldiers, do you think they're going to pull back from that? It's in a more precarious position of launching new military operations, and as soon as those operations start to go badly, they're going to do the same thing they did in Iraq, very likely, and what we take from this in our job of explaining everything that's going to happen under Trump to other workers, to military families, to soldiers, is that these so-called managers, these people that are anointed as the wise commanders of our military and our political system, they're completely illegitimate. I mean, they should have absolutely no authority. They're out for their own narrow interests and out to make money for people that are completely unaccountable, don't care about anyone's life but their own. And so that's what we need to be bringing to people, is that lesson. And the history of the Iraq War teaches us that, how it's managed, teaches us the complete illegitimacy of their leadership and of the system as a whole. And so when they start coming out and building the case towards the next war, when they start telling us all of these reasons why we need to be behind this other war, when they want us to get behind their next war, we need to be in front of it, fighting it, and making sure that this doesn't happen again.